Hey, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to a 10-minute live about building culture inside of meetings. I'm just giving a few seconds for people to join us, and then we'll jump in. And if you're coming in now, just let me know where you're joining from in the comments. And I'm going to look over here to see comments as they come in. So if I look to the side, you'll know what I'm doing. Welcome. I'm really glad you're here. All right. Let's get started. I have a confession. I actually love meetings, which apparently makes me a little strange. Now, whenever I ask a room full of leaders how many of you love meetings, almost nobody raises their hand. Instead, I hear the same complaints over and over. They're too long, nothing gets decided, the wrong people are in the room, or there's too many people in the room, or it should have been an email. It's the same conversation we had last week. And honestly, they're right. I mean, that happens all the time. Plenty of dysfunction in meetings. So let me ask you the same thing I ask in any of those rooms. What's the worst meeting you've sat through? And maybe more interesting is the question of what made them so bad. So go ahead and write in the comments if you'd like. What made them so bad? And by the way, if we haven't met before, I'm Marcy Fortnow. Good to meet you. I spend my days facilitating leadership teams and coaching leaders, which means I've had a front row seat to hundreds of meetings over the years. And that's probably why I've become so fascinated by them. Now, I've asked that question about what people don't like about meetings hundreds of times. And the answers are remarkably consistent. There wasn't a clear purpose. People sat through an hour and still weren't sure why they were there. Nobody wanted to make the decision sitting right in front of them. Or the same three people talked the entire time while everyone's checked out. And here's what strikes me. None of those complaints are actually about the meeting itself. No one walks out of the room angry because there was a conference table in the room or because it started at 3 instead of 2. They're frustrated by something that happened in the room. And here's what I think we get wrong. We treat the evidence that people hate meetings as the meeting is broken. But I don't think the meeting is always broken. I think those meetings are showing us how culture gets built. And that every complaint we have about meetings is really a complaint about the culture being created inside of them. And that's the idea I want to spend our time on today. I don't think culture happens between meetings. I think it's built inside of them. People talk about culture like it's a big mysterious thing, something that gets shaped in hallway conversations or in the values on the wall or in how people describe the company if they were asked at a dinner party. And I don't think that's where it lives. I think culture is simply what people learn to expect. And most of that learning happens in the room, in real time, in meetings, not between them. Now, let me show you what I mean moment by moment. Imagine you're in a Tuesday status meeting. You're sitting on an idea for a couple of days, turning it over, and you finally decide this is the moment to bring it up. So you say, hey, so you say the idea out loud. And before you finish the sentence, the leader says, good, let's park that, and moves to the next line on the agenda. Now, nobody was rude and nobody meant anything by it, and the meeting just moved on. And you tell yourself that it's fine. And the next week at the status meeting, you bring a second idea. But the same thing happens. A nod, a noted, and the conversation rolls forward without you. And by the time you notice something has shifted, and it isn't your confidence in the idea, it's your willingness to open your mouth at all. The fourth time, you don't bring anything. You just listen, you nod along, and wait for the meeting to end. Now, nobody trained you to do that. No one sent a memo saying, stop contributing. You worked it out for yourself, the way everyone works out culture. Not from what's said, but from what happens right after you speak. And here's the part that matters. You didn't just learn something that day. Everyone else in the room did too. Without realizing it, you became a teacher. Your experience taught everyone else what happens when people speak up around here. And that's culture, a quiet one, built entirely out of what happened in the 15 seconds after someone spoke. Now, run that same tape a different way. Same Tuesday meeting, same idea, but this time the leader says, say more about that. And someone else in the room jumps in and builds on it. And a third person disagrees respectfully, and the idea gets sharper because of the disagreement, not in spite of it. And you leave that meeting having experienced one true thing. This is a place where it's worth opening your mouth. Now multiply that by the 9 other people having a version of the same Tuesday week after week. Same mechanism, same 15 seconds after someone speaks, completely different culture. Built and then revealed in the exact same room. Isn't that amazing? Nothing about the meeting changed. Same room, same agenda, same people. The culture changed because of what happened in 15 seconds. You know, every meeting leaves people with a story. My opinion mattered today, or the decision had already been made before I walked in. Those stories don't stay stories. People carry them into the next meeting and the one after that until they stop being stories and start being expectations. This is just how things work around here. And once enough people share the same expectation, that's not a description of your culture, that's the definition of it. Which changes what I think a leader's actual job in the meeting room is. It's not to run a tight agenda, though that helps. It's to notice that every single meeting is teaching people something, whether you intend it or not, and to make sure what it's teaching them is the thing you actually want them to learn. That's a harder job than it sounds, because most of what teaches people happens in seconds, not in a strategy. It's the 15 seconds after someone speaks. It's whether you say more, or let's park that. It's whether the awkward silence after a hard question gets filled by you rescuing the room, or gets held long enough for someone else to answer it honestly. None of that shows up on the agenda. All of that shows up in what people believe and whether this is a place worth being honest. So maybe people don't actually hate meetings. They hate meetings that teach the wrong lessons. They hate leaving feeling unheard. They hate sitting through conversations where nothing changes. They hate discovering the decisions were already made. They hate learning that speaking up isn't worth the risk. In other words, they don't hate meetings, they hate the culture those meetings create. So here's my challenge. Before your next meeting, don't start by asking, what do we need to cover? Ask instead, what is this meeting about to teach people about how this place works? Because if the honest answer is something you wouldn't want repeated 10 more times, that's worth catching before the meeting starts, not after you've heard the complaints for the 100th time. Leaders spend an enormous amount of time and energy trying to create culture. And I think we spend surprisingly little time noticing where culture acts actually created. Your team won't remember the agenda. They'll remember what it felt like to be in that room. And repeated enough times, that feeling becomes the culture, built inside the meeting, not around it. So here's one thing I'd like you to do this week. Don't change the agenda. Don't shorten the meeting. Just watch those 15 minutes after someone speaks. Watch what the leader does. Watch what everyone does. And if you're the leader, watch what you do. Because I think you'll learn more about your culture in those 15 seconds than you will from any engagement survey. And if you notice something interesting, come back and tell me about it in the comments. I genuinely like to hear what you discover. Now, thanks so much for spending a few minutes with me today. And remember, don't just fix your meetings, use them to build your culture. Have a great afternoon.